Today we loaded this chicken coop, which is the first thing I ever built 10 years ago or more, onto the truck of my friends and neighbors, and I'm so happy that they can use it because I no longer raise chickens, but it reminded me of where I came from on this journey towards living off-grid. So when I first moved out of the city, I lived on two different ranches, and the first ranch that I moved on to, the guy who owned it would not let me use power tools to build things because he was afraid I would hurt myself and sue him. And I had never used power tools before. I wanted to learn, but he would not let me learn. So I started off trying to build things, just finding old crates, not crates, pallets, and cutting them up by hand with a saw. And I made this door that later I used on a chicken coop that came out really cool, but it was all nails and hammers and saws. And from there, I moved on to another ranch. And at that ranch, one of the ranch hands taught me how to use a skill saw. And it was the first time that I got to use power tools like that. And I will never forget because he kept telling me as he was teaching me to do this, don't cut your fingers off, don't cut your fingers off. And I'm like, every time I'm using the saw, that's going through my head. And I'm like, okay, this isn't good. So I had to stop thinking like that and have more faith in myself. And I've never had an injury. But from there, I started building things. I started learning how to use more power tools. And so the first thing I built was this chicken coop. And I used I got the roof for free. I got the door that I built for the chicken coop was from an old saddle holder that I just took apart. It was going in the trash, so I took it apart and I made that into the door ramp for the chicken coop. I did buy the purple paint, but everything else besides the hinges and the screws and the purple paint was free and scraps and just stuff I scrounged. And so I designed it and built it, and it worked great. And this was the first time that I had kept chickens, so I was learning a lot. I even made a little window for them so they could have air and stuff. And I put a lot of love into this coop, and it was to see it working so well and to feel like I did a good job. It just gave me all this energy to start building more and more. And then I started just trying to build with anything I could find. So I was getting palm fronds. They were blowing down from people's trees, the leaves and the stalks. So I was like, what can I build with these? So I started making fencing and shade things and a door that I made, which I still have that door today, but it's on a outdoor shower, and just started building anything I could with what I could find. And then this guy saw some of the stuff that I built, and he asked me if I wanted to do some work for him because he was a construction worker, or he hired people for construction working jobs. And I was like, sure. So I started working for him, and not only was it a great learning experience, but I also got a lot of discarded wood, a lot of like just free wood, because they would just be getting rid of stuff they didn't need, and I would start making things with it. They also would, like, some of the jobs we did, they would like gut a sink and replace it and just throw away the faucet, throw away the sink. And so this one specific sink, I was like, oh my God, I like this. So I cleaned it up, and the faucet was just this ugly black faucet, and I sanded it down and got this beautiful brass, coppery looking, I guess, brass faucet. And so then I used other scrap wood and I built an outdoor sink, and then I put some broken tile mosaics on it, and I still have that sink to this day. I started building all kinds of things, but one of the things I noticed from working for this guy in the construction job was how toxic building is. We'd go into a house and tape up plastic all over the entire house, just filled with plastic, paint the whole thing with this toxic smelling paint, and then rip all the plastic down and throw it away. And that really got me thinking, okay, we got to do better than this as humans, and I want to find better ways to do things. So from there, I ended up moving onto a different property. It was my first off-grid property, which I did not own. And I basically converted a 20-foot shipping container. It was originally a 40-footer. It was cut in half. And so one whole side of it was open. And I hired a guy to close off the wall, and I hired a guy to help put in some posts. But everything else I did myself, or I had some friends come help me install some big sliding doors, but I figured it out on my own. I even asked a contractor guy that I met, how can I turn this shipping container into a house? And he had no idea. So I just figured it out. A lot of the stuff that I saw online about people making shipping container homes, they were using spray foam insulation or foam insulation. And I was like, I can't do that. I watched my chickens eating that foam that was left out at the neighbors, and you can't ever clean that up. It's an environmental disaster, and I'm like, I can't justify that. I got to figure out a way to do this without using that. So I basically turned that container into this cute little house, and I'm still actually working on it, but I'm finding ways that I can use things from the land and be more eco-friendly as I go. But while I was there, I did what I knew from conventional building, and so I framed the inside of it, and I put a roof over it and all of that. And so after I did that, the guy who owned the property, he had a large deck. It was like 8 or 10 feet by 35 feet, something like that, that he had hired some guys to build for him. And they built the base, but they kept flaking out and they weren't coming through, and they weren't finishing it, and he couldn't get anyone to finish it. And so he saw what I did, and we talked about it, and I said, well, I can try, I mean, just pay me $15 an hour, because I can't guarantee how great it's going to be, but I will try. And so I ended up building that deck. I put in the railings, I put in the roof, and I can't find the pictures of the finished product, but it came out great. He was super happy with it. And because of that, another guy who was a builder saw my work, and he hired me to work for him. Now, he would build redwood decks and stairs and just really high-end, beautiful, artistic things in LA. So he hired me to work for him. And so I learned so much from working for him. And he even gave me a raise at one point, which was incredible. And so from working with him, I went on and I built these stairs for my neighbor. Then I built a number of other things that I can't find the pictures for, unfortunately. But I also built this deck on my property that I was on at the time, and started building benches, and just, started finding anything I could build with scrap wood, anything I would build, and was getting better and better. And then I moved to this new property I'm on now. And when I got here, I built a solar dehydrator. I built a little deck outside of my studio, the shipping container studio. I built a number of things, but then I started realizing that I wanted to build from the land. I wanted to use more natural materials if I could. And so I started building with cob. And then I stopped, buying wood, and I'll still use scrap wood, but I've been mainly building with what I can get from the land. And part of that's because I don't have a car anymore, so I get my materials from here. So I built a smokehouse, I built a kiln, I've built rocket stoves, I've built ovens, I've built walls. I've got a lot of things in the works that I'm building with cob. I've built stuff with the wood from the land, like a little cabana, and I haven't finished building my house or my studio, and a lot of that is because I'm trying to figure out how I can do it with things from the land in more natural ways. So I'm still learning and exploring as I go, but I feel extremely proud of what I've been able to accomplish and where I came from having a guy tell me that I wasn't allowed to use a skill saw, to me being a professional builder and actually getting a raise by the person I was working for, to me being hired to, build other people's, actually the guy that I worked for in LA, he ended up just giving jobs to me in LA, and I would go and build people's decks and fences and things, and it was awesome. But I'm over that now. When I first moved here off grid, I thought I wanted to make money as a builder, but I realized, no, I just want to be home. I just want to work for me, so I don't do that anymore. But yeah, it's a great exploration, and I'm really excited about finding more and more ways that I can build with things from the land that are more eco-friendly, that will eventually go back to the land. And it feels incredibly empowering, especially as a female, that, you know, I have these deep sensitivities about nature, about how I want to live my life, about feeling connected to the land, about, you know, caring about the wild animals and everything else, and not wanting to pollute, and wanting to harmonize with things around me. And because I can build my own world, I can build a world that harmonizes with my deepest beliefs. And that's the journey I'm on. If I was relying on guys to build my world, most guys I know don't care about the things that I care about. It doesn't matter to them that the wood they're using is toxic, and even though it's going to be preserved forever, it's toxic, or the insulation they're using is toxic, or the paints they're using is toxic. You know, they don't care about that, or most of the ones that I've met. So I care, and I can build my own world my own way because I learned how to build. And that for me is gold.